I was born in New York City in an area called the North Bronx, which was at that time very countrified, and my parents went there because of the Luft, the air. You know, the air was cleaner than where they had lived originally. And it was a lovely place to grow up. I was just 85, but it's a mistake. See, somebody reversed the numbers. I'm 58. My parents were both artistic to some degree. My mother came from a family of artisans. They did embroidery for the Tsar in Russia, and my uncle Misha was an opera singer and a marvelous artist. And so the family was artistic, and my father was musical and literary, and they both read extensively in Russian and English, Dostoevsky and Tolstoy. So it was a cultured, impoverished but cultured home. Financially, the Depression, but they survived, and they wanted me to do something in the arts. First they tried piano. My mother tried piano, and I was hopeless because I wouldn't practice. And the teacher said that I would come in with the same mistakes I made the week before, only I had practiced them. So I was not, and I had no ear. And then they tried Isadora Duncan dancing for a while, and I was good enough, but I didn't have the body for it. Isadora dancers are like little Mack trucks. They're very powerful, you know, short, squat, muscular women, and I was tall and thin and not muscular. I was too tall for ballet. So we ended up with art, and that's how I became an artist by default. When we moved up to Stamford, I was an urban creature, and I came upon this suburban world, and it was so foreign to me. I began to satirize the club women, the American Legion. You know, these were all cultural icons of outside of New York. And so I began doing satires of club women of all kinds, club men. You know, I had studied art since I was 12 years old, so I knew my subject very well. But I reached a dead end, and I went and took a criticism seminar with an old Hungarian painter, Victor Kandel, graduate of the Budapest, Academy. And he would meet with a group of suburban women every week who wanted to be artists. When he got to me, he sent me flying because he understood why I was stuck, and he just pushed me over the edge. And so then the work began to take on an abstract edge. He taught me how to abstract, which is something I had done for years, never understanding what I was doing. All of a sudden I understood it. And then how to access the subconscious. And so in about 8 sessions, I went flying, and from then on, I've been going strong with it. The past year, I've moved into something I've never done before, and it's very exciting. I've gone into a kind of dream state based on drawings that I did when I was in my daughter's apartment in New York for 6 weeks with a broken ankle. Every morning I would get up, they'd bring me breakfast, and I would go to the window. And I would take pencil and paper and start to draw the scene from her window. She's on a high floor, and you look out on all the rooftops. And I sat there for 6 weeks sketching water towers, building cornices, elevator shafts, all the interesting bric-a-brac on the rooftops of the Upper West Side of Manhattan. If it was stormy weather, there was a different kind of sky. Turning myself around a little bit, I saw different things. Then I began to imagine people up there, and what are they doing? Mysterious people. There were always crows in the sky, and they added interest to the sky. And a few months ago, I began converting them into paintings just to see where it would go. And it's gone. And am I excited? It's like a whole new genre. But I'm primarily a people painter and a satirist, so this is a whole new area for me. It's nice at 85 to suddenly be exploring a whole new direction. The present painting started from sketches, where I projected my sketches onto the wall. And that created some very lovely small paintings. But then the inner eye took over, and that's when the magic begins, because anyone can do a sketch, project it, paint it. It's not that big a deal. It requires minimal kind of skill. But what I've been doing now is entering my subconscious. I come into the studio, I've got a blank canvas, a piece of charcoal, I stain the canvas, and I start to draw. And I vaguely know my subject is going to be the rooftops, but I don't know who's going to appear and what's going to appear. And a process that they're now studying scientifically called flow. It's a big subject now, it's a hot topic, because it applies to scientists and composers, you know, not just artists. So the inner eye takes over. And you get into kind of a dream state where you're no longer controlling everything that happens. And I have to have absolute quiet, no music, no phone calls, nothing. And I begin to dream, essentially, on the canvas. And a whole world appears. And it's very exciting because it isn't pre-planned. I like humble materials, as you know. This is plain wrapping paper from a roll of paper. It's nice because you don't get nervous about wasting anything valuable. You can experiment. I use a lot of paper. One of my favorite periods was the Greek Golden Age and the ceramics that it produced. So somehow or other, out of my subconscious are coming Greek plates. And I lie in bed at night with sheets of tan paper or black paper and cut out figures. I put them on the cheap plates that you get at parties, and then I mount them on more expensive paper plates that become the frames. And they remind me very much of the Greek ceramics that I love. It's everyday life, which is, you know, or the gods and the goddesses. And the main concentration is the negative spaces. And that was where the Greeks became masters. The spaces between the figures were as remarkable as the figures themselves. There was a movement in the 50s called arte povera, which said, you know, art is too pretentious, too precious. Let's use humble materials that are throwaways and cast-offs and work with them. And so I'm more or less in that arte povera mode. So I started going to a local junkyard called Vulcan, which is a perfect name for it. And they had boxes and boxes of locks and keys and wooden latches and everything you could dream of. But on the ground were all the pieces that had fallen down. And they were covered with mud. And I would pick them up and carefully save them and then put them on a black velvet background into a very elegant frame. It's sort of celebrating the throwaway, the ephemeral, you know, saying that has value. I recently discovered cardboard. That's one of my arte povera materials. I've been cutting giant figures. I have a whole cast of characters cut out of plain box cardboard. But recently I discovered triple ply, which doesn't bend. Can't cut it unless with an electric saw. And so I've been tacking canvases up on it. And that enables me to move paintings around, see them in sequence, show them to people more easily. That's been a life-changing adventure. My paintings, though, are oil on canvas. The reason I like it is I get a big piece of canvas and I stain it a brown ground. A brown ground is a historical tradition with artists for hundreds of years, since the Renaissance. You don't start with a pure white canvas, you start with a toned canvas. And then once it's toned, I take charcoal and I begin to draw. And because charcoal is easily erasable, I can work on a drawing for a week, 2 weeks, until I get something absolutely perfect. Then I spray it, and then I start putting layers of washes of oil on it. And I like that because it's reversible. I can always go back to my perfect drawing without spoiling it. Acrylic is a nuisance because once it dries, you can't remove it, and painting over it, you lose the layered quality that I'm looking for. Lately, I've been experimenting with printmaking. Now, printmaking is a very technical activity, and I'm not a technician. I don't like technique. But I discovered that if I use the laser printer and the acetates that you use for an overhead projector, I can create prints of my photographs. And I've been doing some really interesting work. Again, doesn't require a press, doesn't require etching equipment. It's low tech. Anybody with a printer and a computer can do it. And I've invented it, so I now have a new print process to my name. I get frustrated when I get bogged down by life and I can't work. And I've learned that I can't switch. Maybe this is one of the defects of getting older, but I can't switch sides of the brains anymore. If I'm going to create, I've got to be in the studio by 10 o'clock in the morning and work steadily through till 2. If I do something else and then try to paint, I haven't got the energy for that. So maybe the age has limited my physical energy, and so I have to be careful not to waste it on something else. One of my 2 sons lives in Sonoma County, north of San Francisco, and he's friendly with a woman who reads tarot cards. She sits at the local tea room and she reads your cards, and everybody swears by her. So he paid for an hour session, and I went in. This was 2 years ago. And she read my cards, and she was very optimistic. They were happy cards, and she showed me everything. And she said, and get rid of the boyfriend, which she probably tells every woman who comes to her. And then she said, I think you ought to write about art. And I thought, that's interesting. So I came home and I mentioned it to my friend Chi-Chi. The tarot card reader said, write about art. And Chi-Chi said, do a blog. I said, what's a blog? I knew nothing about it. I have very little expertise with the computer. I basically use it as a smart typewriter, and I can send photos from it, and that's about so I hired somebody next door. She puts it online, and I started writing. And I discovered I was good at it, that I can write the way I talk. And so people enjoyed reading it. It was like having a conversation with me. I do them once a week. They take at least a full day to do. I try and come up with new stories. And I tell you, it's been so much fun. And I feel like I have 100 friends out there who wait to sort of converse with me. So it's been really a wonderful experience. It's interesting. It's very important, I think, all my artist friends say this, to have a show scheduled, because it gives you some point at which you know your work is going to be seen. And a couple who run a lovely gallery in Stamford in a beautiful Greek revival house are going to be showing my work at the end of May. It'll give all my friends a chance to see what I've been up to in the past year. And most of all, it'll give me a chance to see the work in a different setting. And every artist will tell you this. You take your work out of where you created it and put it up someplace, you can evaluate it better. Am I in the right direction? Am I not? This looks good, this doesn't. So that's what I'm looking forward to. My ultimate goal, I want to be in the Whitney Biennial, and I want to have a retrospective in a museum. It doesn't have to be a major museum, it can be a minor one, but I want to, that's my goal. The excitement is getting better and exploring new directions. Anybody can redo what they've done before. I mean, that's no challenge. The challenge is seeing where you're going. And that's the beauty of art, is that it has no real limits on it. But I work primarily for the joy of working, and that's my main, it keeps me alive, keeps me enthusiastic, and because I don't know where it's going to go yet. It's always, it's a life adventure, and that's what's keeping me young, I like to think.